if we go on lockdown for 2 weeks. That's not the reality of it. We're trying to slow down, because so for every one person who gets the virus, 2.5 people are getting infected from them.
From that one person.
From that one person.
Wow, that even sounds like a very small number. I would think it'd be more than that. All right, guys, this is Coach Amy up in Burg CrossFit, Sunbury, Ohio. Welcome to the Boom Show. So we are in Ohio. We are starting week 2 of our new lives. So week 2 of the gym being closed, week 2 of, we just got stricter orders. I wouldn't say stricter orders, but more defined orders of what stay at home means. From our governor, which in Ohio, unlike Florida, they're they are definitely taking the lead. One of the states that are taking the lead as far as closures and updates and things like that. So our other 2 gyms in Florida, Burg CrossFit and Burg CrossFit North, they have been shut down as well, but they're encouraged to stay home, but there's no mandate. There's no kind of parameters around it. It's kind of use your best judgment. So today we have a special guest on the show is one of our members, Kierra Dye. She is a ER nurse, correct? What are you? You're not an ER nurse. Your specialty is neuro. Right. But now it's changed a little bit, yeah?
Yeah. So our floor was converted to the COVID-19 rule-out floor. So right now, a lot of hospitals across the country are trying to convert to being private rooms, because we've learned that that's what's best for patient safety and satisfaction. But in that transition time, there are still semi-private rooms, which means 2 to 4 patients in one room. Our floor has all private rooms. So, and we typically get a lot of elective admissions. So we get people that are scheduled to come in for surgeries or for epilepsy. So since all that was shut down, our floor was turned into the COVID rule-out floor. So they come to our floor, they get tested. If it comes back positive, they stay. If it comes back negative, they get sent somewhere else.
How long does that take, the test itself?
So there are 2 types of tests. One, we are sending to the Department of Health, and the turnaround time is between 24 and 48 hours.
Wow.
And then the other one is getting sent out to either LabCorp or the CDC, and that can take up to 7 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I come in, I get tested, and you basically say, hey, go home, or do they stay in the hospital 24 hours and wait?
So if they're sick enough to need hospitalized, then they get admitted to our floor and they stay there until the test comes back, in which case, if they're positive, they stay. If they're negative, they get sent somewhere else to keep them away from the sick people. Outpatient, if you were to go to a swabbing station or go to your doctor's office and get tested, that it takes 7 days. So what they're telling people is to pretend that you already have it and just isolate yourself until proven otherwise.
Right. Because that's what I was saying. It's from media sources and articles I've read, obviously there's only so many hospital beds, right? So I would assume that for most people, it would present just like the flu. So most people combat the flu at home. They're not being hospitalized. So I would think that if their symptoms weren't necessary for a ventilator or something like that, that you would probably tell them to go home and just not go outside.
Yeah, the majority of the people that come in are getting sent home.
Okay.
The patients that we're getting are the ones who, I would say out of the 29 patients we have, probably 27 are cancer patients that are undergoing current chemo.
Okay.
And so they're immunocompromised. So we're keeping them in because if they do have the virus, they can go really bad really fast.
Yeah. Wow. All this stuff is so fascinating. Okay. So Kierra is on, how long have you been now switched over to this type of, like your floor? How long has that been switched over for now?
About 2 weeks. We've been getting these patients for about a month, but we switched over to strictly these patients 2 weeks ago.
And have you seen, I mean, just watching the news this morning, it went from like 3 counties in Ohio to like, look like a firework went off. Have you seen an influx of people? I'm assuming that would be, yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes. So like I said, the majority of the patients are getting sent elsewhere, but we are getting like our turnaround for patients, it's the minute that they get negative, we're sending them somewhere else. It's typically, it takes a little bit of time to get them a bed somewhere else, but our beds are needed so much for these patients that are rollout that patients aren't even staying on our floor 12 hours if the test comes back.
Can you explain in layman's terms the progress of this virus? So, and I've seen it in articles too, where people seem to be under the misconception that just because they're young and healthy, like this isn't affecting them. So I want to talk about the progress and how it can go from 0 to hero on your common person. So that way we can really understand from your point of view how it's so respiratory, right? Like you're like cardiac, you're, you know, I'm sure you can get into super crazy details, but for not to freak people out, but just share with us how it differentiates from the flu and why it's so dangerous as far as like how fast it progresses in your body.
Sure. So the flu is more of an upper respiratory infection. So if you think you get like the headache, you get the fever, the body aches and everything, a lot of times you have like a runny nose. Whereas the coronavirus is lower respiratory, which means that because it's lower respiratory, you don't have a lot of those symptoms right off the bat. So people don't have any symptoms for up to 14 days when they're infected and are contagious, which is what makes this so dangerous. Is people, if you think about everyone that you've come in, well, maybe not right now because we're on lockdown, but if you think about before, everyone that you came in contact with in 14 days and everyone that they came in contact with in 14 days, potentially you're infecting all of those people. And also because it's lower respiratory, it affects your breathing so much quicker.
Can you describe troubled breathing? So like this is kind of like I have asthma, so like I know what that kind of feels like, but troubled breathing means what?
So they look like they just did Murph.
Okay.
and they're laying in bed.
Like basically like going up the stairs, you're out of breath.
Yeah, like running up the stairs, not just like someone walking up the stairs. They look like they are in the middle of a CrossFit workout and they are laying in bed.
Enough said.
Yeah. Yeah. And the scary thing is that we'll look at the monitor and we'll have like the oxygen sensor on their finger and it'll still be reading 100%, like they're 100% oxygen saturation, but that's a late sign. So they're fighting to breathe. At some point they will just tire out and stop breathing. And that's when it becomes like CPR. Their heart will stop. That's when people die. So even though their oxygen may be 100%, within minutes it can go to 0.
Wow.
So we're having to and we're finding with these people that if they do have it, they go bad so fast. We're not doing these non-invasive things like in the hospital, if patients have trouble breathing, a lot of times we'll try like CPAP or BiPAP, like the things that people wear if they have sleep apnea before we jump to putting a tube down their throat. But we're not even messing with that because we're finding that wasting that time is putting them more at risk. So we are jumping right to you know, most of the time
Intubating.
when most of the time when we intubate people, they're already like unconscious. But at this point, we're telling them like, hey, just so you know, we're gonna paralyze you, sedate you, and put a tube down your throat because otherwise you may not make it.
And what is the like percentage would you say, and I know this is like just where you are, you're just one person, but the people coming in that are like just your average healthy people versus like immunocompromised or like with what do they call mobility?
Comorbidities.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm like more mobility. I'm thinking like CrossFit. What is the percentage? I mean, from everyone I've talked to, they just think it's affecting like old people and people that have like immune disorders and things like that.
So one thing that we're finding is we're getting a lot of people that are coming in because they're having flu symptoms and they didn't know, but they have cancer. So in January, my roommate who is 27, my old roommate who is 27, found out that she had really serious Hodgkin's lymphoma. So she was immunocompromised and didn't even know it. And so she was living her life like she was not immunocompromised. And the same thing are happening with these patients. They're coming in thinking that they may have the flu, and then they're finding out that they have cancer.
Right.
So that's one thing. The majority of the patients that are young and healthy are being sent home to self-quarantine. And I'm hoping that they take it seriously because even though it may just be a flu for them, it's killing people. It's not only killing old people. Like I said, the patient that I had that got sent to the ICU, thank God he survived, but
it's like our moms and dads.
Yeah.
It's like one step away.
Yeah. So these patients that are, really sick, yes, they are dying, but also like, there are people that aren't that sick that are dying from this. It depends on how badly it affects you.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that until it unfortunately hits home, close to home, that you're not really, it's out of sight, out of mind. I know, I don't want to like step on anybody's toes or offend anyone, but I know it's easy for me to say, right? I don't have kids or I'm not married, so I can just, nothing changes for me, I'm cool with this, but I know for a fact there's many, 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 many families who are having to like, still one spouse works, one spouse doesn't, and they're like moving their kids around the neighborhood to different people to allow them to watch them. And then there's businesses that aren't really taking this serious and are still open. We're lucky enough at the gym that I can just come here by myself and work. And that's it. Like I don't go anywhere else besides here and there. But I see a lot of people working out together and biking together and hanging out together. And what is from someone who is literally on the front lines of this stuff, what is the real deal? Like I would love for you to be completely transparent and be honest with our members and let them know how serious this is as far as like the responsibility they have as healthy people to take this serious.
So what I've been telling people is if you wouldn't share a toothbrush with that person, you should not be seeing them in person.
Right.
So because that's the reality of this situation. Like when the Arnold got canceled, I was like, oh my God, we're blowing this out of proportion. People need to calm down.
Same.
And then when I found out how it is 2 to 3 times more infectious than the flu, and we don't know enough about this virus because it is so new. The first case was in December. The flu still kills people. It still kills a lot of people. The thing is, you don't hear about it on the news as being the flu that kills people. You hear it as like respiratory failure or sepsis.
Right.
But the flu still kills people, and it's been around for hundreds of years. We have a vaccine against it. We have Tamiflu now, and it's still killing people. This is a flu-like virus, but we don't have any defense against it.
Right. People think that, I think a lot of people are just naive and they think that, oh, well, if I do get infected, I'll go to the doctor and there's a vaccine or there's nothing. They're
There's nothing.
experimenting right now with, I mean,
Mhm.
I heard today on NPR, like hepatitis drugs and drugs that
Mhm.
treat HIV and things like that, just to see if anything will take. But from what I've
Mhm.
heard is that it's mutating so much and there's so many different strains. If you
Mhm.
look at the original strain that is like far back to Wuhan, you know, it is like
Mhm.
a spider web of crazy mutations that this disease has, or this virus has taken on. And I think it's just, that's
Mhm.
the issue, is that these doctors and nurses and people that are working the front lines are trying so hard to figure it out. And I
Mhm.
think people, unfortunately, are not taking it as serious as, if it were up to me, I would say quarantine the whole damn country for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
No one leaves. But I think that people are kind of bending the rules. Like, you know, there's pictures on Instagram of like me sitting 6 feet away from somebody, my neighbor, you know, that's all and well, but it's like, come on, you know, just like stay the hell home for like 2
Yeah.
weeks at least, or
Yeah.
don't hang out with people. You know, it's just, it's tough to get that message across. So to kind of not wrap this up, but what is your best, like, I guess, outlook as far as the future of this? Like, what is next for this virus, and what is the outlook as far as us as a country? And is this something that's going to come around every year and we're going to have to like figure it out, or what's the outlook on that?
So if you think about the most recent pandemic was H1N1, the swine flu, that was back in 2009. That was just kind of a mutation of the flu virus that we already knew about. Um, and it wasn't as deadly. It was really dangerous for pregnant people, but other than that, it wasn't as deadly as the coronavirus that we have now. That is still around. People are still getting H1N1. We're still getting patients that have H1N1, but we have treatments and we have a vaccine against it now. So it's not as big of a deal. What we're trying to do, we're not thinking that this coronavirus is going to disappear if we go on lockdown for 2 weeks. That's not the reality of it. We're trying to slow down, because if the amount, so for every one person who gets the virus, 2.5 people are getting infected from them,
From that one person?
from that one
Wow,
person.
that even sounds like a very like small number. I would think it'd be more than that.
Right. So it does sound like a small number, but for the flu, it's like 0.75 people.
Wow.
So
Well, if you
it's
add those numbers up, if we went from 26 confirmed cases last week to like, I don't even know what it is now, multiply that by
462. Yeah.
multiply that by 2.5, and then in another week multiply that number by, like,
Mhm.
it's like, if you do
Yeah.
the math, it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah. It's an upward spike. So what we're trying to do is slow down the number of infection cases so that we have the resources to handle it. We're not going to be able to stop this thing. It's already here. Um, but we're trying to slow it down so that we can put the people on ventilators who need ventilators, so that we can do these tests to see if there are any treatments that can help this, to give the CDC time to develop a vaccine so we can protect people. Right now in Italy, people who are over the age of 80, they're just saying, we're sorry.
Oh
They're
my
not
God.
even, they're not even trying to put them on a ventilator because they don't have enough.
Can you go into that further? Why is that like the epicenter? Did that become the epicenter of this whole thing? Italy.
So Italy, so it all started in China and then kind of went out from there after international travel. Um, so Italy didn't put into place any of these social distancing um, measures until it was already very widespread. And
Oh,
Italy is the
geez.
second, yeah, and Italy is the second oldest population outside of Japan.
Okay.
So anyone who gets it can have a bad outcome because they are older. So basically they're saying, if you're over 80, we're sorry, we can't help you. And then also the healthcare people who get it, that lowers the amount of people that can treat these patients.
Oh my gosh.
So we're trying to slow the spread because like if I get sick, that takes me off the unit, which is running a nurse down. And, you know, luckily with these ending these elective surgeries and elective admissions, that gives us more nurses to work with. But in Italy, they didn't do that. So then all these patients came in sick. They infected all the healthcare workers. The healthcare workers are sick. So then they have to quarantine for 2 weeks. And then more people are coming in that are sick. And
if you are sick, if you do have symptoms and you're treating it like you do have it, what's the time frame on like infection?
So they're saying to self-isolate for 2 weeks. What I would say is to self-isolate for 2 weeks after you feel better.
Okay. Yeah, because you could still, yeah, that makes complete sense. Because like, if I feel better, I go to the gym. Obviously, it's not an option right now, but it's just like the flu, obviously worse. But that brings me to my next question, and then we'll wrap up because I could talk about this forever. I find it fascinating. I don't know why. As far as like, if I touch something and I'm sick, or if I cough on something and I'm infected, how long does it like live on surfaces? How long should we be sanitizing things and worrying about like wiping down, I don't know, the mouse pad or the mouse or the computer?
So that's a good question. They're still testing it, and it really depends on surface.
Like porosity?
So that's exactly it. So like cardboard has a ton of pores, so it can live on cardboard for up to 24 hours.
Okay.
There are certain things like stainless steel. It doesn't live as long on stainless steel. Plastic is pretty porous, so anything that's plastic, I would just try to wipe it down in between every use.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're doing at the hospital. We're trying to stick to one person, one computer. You use that for your shift, and then you wipe it down when you're done. Obviously, it's not a perfect system because they're
for sure
haven't have enough computers for every person to have their own. But that's what we're trying to do. We're wiping it down. We're wiping everything down anytime it enters a room or exits a room, which we did anyway, but we're being a lot more diligent about like hitting every single surface.
Awesome. Wow. This is incredible. This is an incredible time.
It is. Everyone keeps saying unprecedented, and it's so unprecedented that we're not prepared for it because we never thought that this could happen. So it's not only that it hasn't happened before, it's that we never, I mean, they make horror movies about this.
For sure. Outbreak. I've seen it.
Yeah.
If you go to Netflix, if you go to Netflix right now, like the top 10 movies are all like I Am Legend, Outbreak.
Yeah.
People are freaking out. And it's so funny. I not to get like Enneagram, everybody that knows me is going to roll their eyes right now, but I remember when, in one of our episodes previously, I talked about how 6s were the most common number on the Enneagram. And I'm like, that's so weird. I don't really know any 6s. I've never met a 6 or blah, blah. And Natalie Renzi, one of our members, messaged me about a week and a half ago. She goes, hey, remember when you said that you didn't know any 6s, or where are they at, or where do they dwell? And she goes, well, there they are. They're out at Kroger right now. There they are right now at Kroger buying 47,000 rolls of toilet paper and literally not caring. So I was like, touche. I get it now.
Yeah. And I would like to share that the coronavirus causes many problems, but explosive diarrhea is not one of them.
So random. I'm like, if I'm buying anything in bulk, I'm buying like not ice cream, but like something that I'm going to want that's going to definitely be, I don't know. It was just so weird. Yeah. I don't really watch the news that much. And that night in Ohio was when they closed the schools. So I think everybody was just straight freaking out, and there was no parking in Kroger. Should have known something was wrong then. Had no idea. And then I'm just walking through, like looking at people's carts, like, what are you preparing for? It's insane. But yeah, and you know, it's okay. People are allowed to feel that way. I can't, judge anyone for feeling. It is a serious thing, right? If you have kids, if you have a family, especially if you have an autoimmune, any kind of issues like that, it's I can totally get where it is a little bit scary, you know, but chill out with the damn toilet paper, all right? I'm good. I had 2 rolls left and I've made it this far. So I'm headed to the grocery store. I'm headed to the grocery store. But anyway, thank you so much for taking your time for us. And also from everyone here at Burg, and I'm sure everyone in the world, thanks for kind of putting yourself in harm's way for everyone here and the hard work. I know you're busting your ass.
Certainly trying to.
Well, you're doing awesome. So, all right, everybody, Burg CrossFit, stay safe. I hope this was very informative. And please, 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 social distancing does not mean hanging out with your friends. Just like Kierra said, if you wouldn't share a toothbrush, just don't hang out. Why don't you FaceTime? Why don't you do what we're doing? Have a Zoom call. I did it the other night. It was so much fun. You'd be surprised. So thanks a lot. Have an awesome day. And we will catch you later.
Bye.